Sean here with BaseMint Comics. It is not the weekend, but the tea is ready. So it's time for another Corner Box Classics. And you're probably like, I've been waiting with bated breath for this Corner Box Classics. Why wasn't it over the weekend? Saturday was record store day. So I was up at 4:30 in the morning in line at my favorite local record store because a band that I have loved my whole life, this Gainesville, Florida band, For Squirrels, very tragic. They put out an independent release, only 1,000 CDs ever made of their first record. Second record was put out on Sony, but the band unfortunately was playing a showcase at CBGB's, driving home and from that show to make a concert. I'm friends with a fellow who was worked at Sony at that time through my dealings with Sony, and their van blew a tire and it killed the singer and the bass player and their manager at the time. And so I never owned a physical. It was very sad. Obviously, it's always bummed me out. That record, Example, by the band For Squirrels, is probably my favorite album of all time. And not living in Florida, and there only being 1,000 copies made, I was never able to come across a copy of their first album. So they released 800 copies on record store day of their first record. And so I absolutely needed to wake up super early and stand outside with a bunch of fellow record fans. And the weird thing is, talking to one of the guys in the line that I've met a few times, because we're always kind of in the same spot, we kind of get there around the same time. We were chatting about growing up in the area, and we found out his son he owns the house that I grew up in, where my whole comic book and music listening thing started. His kid lives in that house. And so I have some photos on my phone of me as a kid in that house. And so we kind of exchanged numbers, and he's going to send me some pictures of the inside of that house that I grew up in, because I've always been curious what it looked. When I was a kid, it was a duplex, and like my sister lived in the apartment above us, and it was the house that's the candy store. So he was like wild. Anyways, Collective Soul album, they did a new wave thing. I'm a big fan of them. Huge Rod Stewart guy, so he did an alternate recording. These are like the original recordings of Atlantic Crossing, which is a great album, has the fantastic tune Stone Cold Sober. Here it's known as Too Much Noise. I don't know anybody who should be an X-Men fan that doesn't love the Blue Album by Weezer, because I mean, how do you not love a song that name drops Kitty Pryde and Nightcrawler? But this is some master tapes from that record, some Third Eye Blind B-sides and rarities from their first couple of records. The original first Tommy Keene album, the way that it was originally intended to be recorded. Tommy Keene is a fantastic songwriter, not very well known, but Paul Westerberg loves Tommy Keene, and Paul Westerberg's one of the greatest songwriters ever. So Paul Westerberg, you get the idea. If Westerberg wants you in his band and he thinks you're a great songwriter, you're a great songwriter. And The Cure's acoustic hits. So it's not always me standing in line for comics. Sometimes it's records. You're like, I'm not here for records, man. I'm here for comics from 1982. And we're going to get to those. Then the other reason why everything was delayed is normally if I don't record it on a Saturday, I record it on a Sunday. But Sunday was my main man's 4th birthday. So, none of this is really important. Like, it's fun. But in the grand scheme of things, this is the first to go. Got my wristband to Motor City Comic Con. Did I get it for the whole weekend? Absolutely not. You know why? Because I hate the crowds on Saturday. I don't want to get slapped in the face while I'm looking through back issues by some kid's 9-foot wingspan in his cosplay while he takes photos. Uninterested in meeting any slee stacks. But I do like meeting creatives, and I do like looking for back issues, and I can get all of that done with Hank on a Friday and avoid the Saturday crush of slee stack enthusiasts. You're all going to think I have a huge problem with slee stacks. I don't actually care, but there it is. All right, I'm already too many minutes into this. So, Cornerbox Classics. Or Old Comic Book Day, as McGroovy likes to call it. What I would have peddled up to the shop if I had been peddling it up to the shop the week of July 6th, 1982. First thing I would have grabbed up off the stack, or off the rack, would have been Avengers 224, Two from the Heart, obviously released July 6th, 1982. Plot by Jim Shooter. Script by Alan Zelenetz. Pencils by Mark D. Wright. Inks by Brett Breeding. Letters by Janice Chang. Colors by Christy Shield. And a cover by Brett Breeding. So we're still in the fresh new team of the Avengers that was picked up. I think 221 is the issue where we got the new team. And Wasp and Iron Man and Thor. It's pretty great. Like, I like seeing Thor swooping in there as Wasp, and Iron Man are dealing with gas gushing out of the sewer system. There is a train fire that is happening. I really like, I think this might, in Cornerbox Classics, this might be my first, like, Mark Bright pencils in the comic. And I just, like, Iron Man unfurling the cement there so they can get down to the subway and start rescuing people. This panel cracked me up because it is legit Cap. Like, could you imagine? You're a grown-ass man. And it would be cool, even if I'm a grown-ass man, getting rescued by the real Captain America. That would be fantastic. Like, if I was getting heave-hoed up to Thor, I'd be like, this is amazing. But I had to chuckle at this dude just getting picked up by his waist and lifted by Captain America. That had to be awkward. So, you know, Avengers goodness. She-Hulk is like, hey guys, I'm like, because you tore up the ground, this building is kind of buckling. And so Hawkeye and She-Hulk, she's trying to hold the building up, and then Hawkeye busts out some buzzsaw arrows, because that's a thing, and kind of slices these two light poles a little bit so they tip over and brace the building. It's just like fun Avengery stuff. But what this is all setting up is the fact that Jan is a socialite, and she's the well-known Avenger because she's made her secret identity known. So she's famous in the press. This would 100% happen in real life. And so then, you know, one of the reporters, which they are oft to do, brings up Yellow Jacket. And so she's like, all right, we're done. I'm out of here. I don't want to talk about my ex-husband being in prison. So then we cut to Long Island, where Scott Lang is enjoying watching the television. He sees the news interview with what's happening, gets pissed off, kind of recounts his tales with Hank and getting the suit in Marvel Premiere, and then decides, like, why the hell is he rotting in prison? I should go bust him out. Like, I owe Hank that, right? So he shows up to the prison. Hank's obviously there because he's in prison. Ant-Man's like, let's get you out of here. Let's bust you out of here. I brought an ant. You can ride out. I, you know, shrink gassed you so you're little. And Hank gives him the old beast in season 2 of X-Men, the animated series, when he's like, hey man, I got to show that the law matters to us too. And he's like, I'm going to get out of here the right way. I'm staying in prison. Like, this is the hand I've been dealt. I'm going to deal with it. So then we cut to, this was weird. Tony, like, then cuts to Tony showing up to some apartment that he's clearly not been at for some time. And there's like a chef there, and I believe the chef's daughter. Anyways, it's a whole thing where, you know, he's basically just talking about his lonely life, and he's been invited out to a party, but he's not thinking about going. And then the chef guy is like, hey, that Janet Van Dyne is going to be there. And so Tony's like, hey, I'll go hang out with Janet. And you can see where this is going, which is like, Tony's a scumbag. That's where this is going. So Tony, you know, and Janet hit it off, obviously. But Tony is like not letting her know that he's Iron Man, which it's kind of creepy. So even Rhodey is like, dude, he picks him up in the helicopter because, of course, Tony Stark's that dude. Like, Rhodey's like, you gotta, like, when are you gonna tell her that you're Iron Man? And he's like, oh, I will. So then we get a shot of clearly Egghead's all jazzed about how much this must be torturing Hank, that Tony is out there hanging out with his lady. You know, it's not a good look. And then what's even worse is, like, this is legitimately, like, I mean, they start, it's not even like a tiny courtship. They immediately go into like the, oh, I'm falling in love. It's ridiculous. This is where, like, the Jim Shooter plot. I'm looking forward to getting like, solid editor-in-chief, not my favorite plotter, not my favorite writer. So clearly they are hitting into this whole thing as just like the whirlwind romance of Tony Stark and Janet Van Dyne. And she's having fun because she's just like, this is great. Like, he's in the public eye, but, like, not a part of my world, which is, like, where, you know, like, come on, Tony, put it together. So Tony eventually goes back to his place. When he gets there, he's met with Captain America. And Steve, like, throws down a People magazine, and he's basically like, the hell do you think this is doing to Hank? Like, this is no way to treat your friend. Like, and so then Tony, like, starts giving him, like, he's like, oh, don't worry about it. I'm taking good care of Hank, you know, without his knowledge, maybe even against his wishes. He's got my top attorneys working for him, my personal physicians keeping tabs on him. I've made shrinks available, detectives for all the legal, paid all his legal fees. What more do you need me to do? And Steve's like, not bang his girl? Like, that's a big one. That's like, I'm sure he'd probably be like, hey man, if I foot the bill for the legal fees, as long as you're not like, Tony. So then, of course, we get a very quick, like, he thinks about drinking, and it's just like, come on, guys. It's ridiculous. So then Thor, which, you know, I hope somebody lets Hank know this, because Thor's like, hey man, doesn't bother me. Like, fair maiden is fair game. So a boo on Thor there. Yay for Cap. You know, he's a real one. So then Tony finally shows up because she's like getting ready for her date with Tony, and he shows up in the Iron Man suit, and she's like, what are you doing here? Like, and then he takes off the helmet, and as you would expect, she's like, oh, like, no, man, you're one of Hank's friends. Like, I don't want to do this with one of Hank's friends. And I kind of liked the idea that you weren't part of my world, that it was like an escape, that I wouldn't be constantly reminded about the fact that my ex-husband went bananas, partially because of competing with you, which makes this even more wrong. You know, and so it ends with the inmates, which you knew was happening, busting Pym's balls and throwing a paper that says Stark jilts heiress. And then look at that look on Hank's face. That dude ain't getting rehabilitated now. He's going to make Ultron Mach 5 is what he's going to do. So there was that. Boo on Tony. It's a bum out move, man. Not cool. Thank God he's not written like that in his regular title. That was, like, even when I was reading that, I was like, I think Tony would be a little bit smarter than that. But, you know, what are we going to do? Let's blame Jim Shooter and Alan Zelenetz. Up next, as I was pedaling up to the shop, I would have grabbed Incredible Hulk 276, The Return of the UFOs, which for me would be the debut of the UFOs, because this would be how I would be introduced to the UFOs. July 6, 1982, written by Bill Mantlo, pencils by the late, great Sal Buscema, inks by Joe Sinnott, letters by James Novak, colors by Bob Sharon, and a super fun cover by Al Milgrom of the UFOs fighting the Hulk. So, Hulk is smart. What a time to be jumping on board the Incredible Hulk series. But in doing so, Rick Jones has blasted himself with some gamma radiation, and he is now hulking out on his own. So they're working on fixing this with Barit, who is an alien that I guess was like filming the exploits of the Hulk for a television show on her planet, and has these little like art piece creatures that she hangs out with from her planet. I don't know. I'm new to this title. So Hulk winds up fixing Rick so he no longer has gamma radiation in him, which is a good thing. And then like Hulk sort of explains, like, this is kind of the first time that Betty is really around Banner while he's like able to shift back and forth, and he's pretty jazzed about it. Like, he's like, hey, this is as close to a cure that I'm gonna get. And Betty's like, I'm not on board with this, like, which, you know, kind of a bum out, because she's like, you sort of like, the goal was to cure yourself of the Hulk. Like, I don't want to be like, you're kind of, this is you making peace with being the Hulk, and I'm not really here for it. Like, I want it gone. I want a normal life with you. So she storms off, and you know, Barit tries to like calm Banner down with basically like, hey, you're doing your best. She'll sort of sort it out. And so then Hulk kind of gives her a breakdown of like, you know, she's kind of like, dude, I don't want to be having, you know, we have a normal life, and then all of a sudden the leader shows up and starts blasting everything to holy hell. That's gonna suck. And he's like, well, I don't really want to do that either, but if the Hulk could, like, you know, stop a train from crashing or something like that, then I should, you know. So, you know, I see both sides. But unfortunately, Betty is proven right, because at that exact moment, the UFOs are like, what's up, Banner? And they start attacking Banner. And it's weird because he like doesn't immediately Hulk out, which, you know, because it's like, he's triggering the thing now. And I guess the UFOs were 4 scientists who were like trying to duplicate the Fantastic Four's powers, which was pretty cool. I don't know when their first appearance was, but I like the design. I like the look of them. I've always liked the look of them, but this is, Cornerbox Classics is my first foray into Hulk. Like, from this point on, I have a complete run of Volume 1 of Hulk until, you know, they reboot it in the late 90s. So buckle up, because this is me discovering the Incredible Hulk. So he then eventually changes into the Hulk, and then it's like, let's smash the holy hell out of the UFOs time, which is fun. Their power sets are cool. Man, I am not doing good with their names. I read this and the Avengers issue like days ago. And like I said, not super. Vector maybe is the one. Maybe that's it. This guy, I think his design is cool as hell. It would probably be that'd be a pain to draw, I think. I remember in Uncanny X-Men in like the late 500s, there was like this arc, I think it was written by Matt Fraction, maybe Ed Brubaker, where Colossus got a tattoo, which was, it was dumb, like, for multiple reasons. But the one that stuck out to me the most, and this was me, like, it was unfortunate because it's one of those moments where you get like sucked out of a comic book from it being a story and just realize like you're like in the universe while you're reading it, but then something happens that's so dumb where you're like, oh, this is a comic. And not like in a good dumb way, but like they had Colossus get a Kitty Pryde tattoo because she had just like died at the end of Astonishing X-Men. And I just thought, that's stupid. Like, that's like, it's dumb, but then someone's gonna have to draw that until the end of time. Like, I'm sure whoever is stuck drawing the design of Deken with that tattoo on his arm is super annoyed every time they have to, like, or maybe they like it. I don't know. I'm not an artist, so maybe something like that would be, but if I had to draw that on every panel, it'd get tedious. I wonder if his like thing changes. I don't know. Looks sort of similar. So anyways, they're all fighting, and then one of the characters is able to his name was Vector. Kick-ass. One of the other characters is able to pull the gamma rays out of Banner and change him back into Bruce, and then he gets clobbered. So this is sort of an interesting thing. Like, you know, I was expecting this was going to be like just 200 issues of Thor kicking ass, or Hulk kicking ass. So this is kind of an interesting thing to be able to see him like get sort of attacked by the UFOs and so on and so forth. So then Barit kind of, it then cuts to, like, he's been defeated by the UFOs. One of Barit's little guys goes and alerts her to what's happening. Barit slaps Betty out of it and is like, we've got to go help him. And if you're not going to do it, I'm going to do it. And instead of creating like these little art pieces, which she does, I don't know, man, she is a black hole to me. That's a weird character. I'm going to figure it out as I go with you. We're on this journey together. She changes them into these monster things. And that is the end of the issue. So I think I'm, 2 or 3 issues into my Incredible Hulk run, and so far it's been exactly what I was hoping it would be, which was fun. I do love comic books that are fun. Sometimes that is put to the test. Like in Marvel 2-in-1 Annual Number 7, And They Shall Call Him the Champion, released July 6, 1982, written by Tom DeFalco, penciled by Ron Wilson, inks by Bob Camp, letters by James Novak, colors by George Roussos, and a cover by the great Ron Wilson and Frank Giacoia. I've been updating my spreadsheet database with all the release dates and stuff like that, and it's interesting how many of these cats, this Frank Giacoia dude, man, he was working on early Fantastic Four, early Avengers stuff. And it's real interesting to see some of these names that I didn't recognize when I started at Cornerbox Classics, how far back they go in the bullpen. That's been pretty interesting to me. 2-in-1, a lot of fun. I believe this is the final annual for it. And I remember when I found this in a shop as I was flipping through long boxes and saw that Colossus was on the cover, and I got all excited about it because I do love Colossus and my X-Men appearances. So Thing, as he is usually when we're we're going to introduce some new crazy element into the story, Thing is oftentimes posing for sculptures for Alicia Masters so he can get plinked out of existence, and Alicia can freak out because she's like, where is he? So this little boxing promoter alien pops up. Just that right there. You got to just be prepared for what we're in. Boxing promoter alien is the bar that we're at in this, which I was okay with because he's basically, I've got this champion dude, and he's going to fight all the other tough guys from across the universe. That's the hook. That is the hook of this issue. And I was like, oh, I'm on board. I'm on board for this. It's going to be a... So then you get him, he's doing the same thing to other characters. And this particular shot right here cracked me up because it is Colossus ripping out a tree stump. And you will see this throughout Claremont's run on Uncanny X-Men. That's a thing that Colossus does a lot. That he pulls stumps out of the ground to show his strength. Then he shows up to the Scarlet Witch and Vision's place. And then he's about to grab Vision. And he's like, oh, you're not even human. See ya. Speciesists, I guess. So then they're dropped into this intergalactic boxing ring. Cool. I'm still on board. And then they are met with, they realize that they're in kind of this bubble in outer space, and they are met with a dude who has some power cosmic named the Champion, who skipped out on leg days because that is one ginormous upper torso and an overall ridiculous looking getup on the Champion. So he explains that he has traversed the galaxy, boxing aliens. Cool. And when this was initially tossed out, I was like, oh, okay. I thought the cover was just it's just a thing. And I'm curious, I don't know off the top of my head, what Rocky came out around July 1982, or what big fight was going on, because clearly this was tossed out there. There's too much boxing. All of a sudden our guys get alien trainers. hilarious. And then the training montage, Reed and Alicia try to figure out what's going on. Training montage happens, and everybody at some point or another, I did dig this because I was like, oh, it's an X-Men appearance that I've never read before until today. So that was fun as they're trying to figure out what happened to Colossus. Even though I struggle during this time period with anybody that writes the X-Men that's not Chris Claremont, because he has the best handle on all of their voices. But it's a training montage where if these characters sort of mess up or something doesn't sit right, they plink them right out of existence and send them back to where they were. And so then this becomes like headline news across the country that this is happening, that this intergalactic fight between Earth heroes versus an alien champ. They're selling tickets to it. And then this is the part where I was like, holy smokes. I thought this would be like just a superhero versus the champion type of thing. But no. They legitimately look at Thor there in his Everlast trunks and his boxing gloves. And then Cyclops and Wolverine show up to the show in disguises. Hilarious. And then the champion comes out, and legitimately they're boxing. With boxing gloves. And that's what it is. Like he plinks the Hulk comes out there and he's like, oh, I don't want to fight some mindless brute. So he plinks him out of existence to try to fight that one, fight Sasquatch, gets rid of him, dumps him. Colossus goes out there and puts up a pretty good fight, even though he's the newbie, which I did like, because when he initially showed up, he was like, oh man, I really gotta show these are like the big time heroes. And it is interesting because at this point, Colossus has been around technically for 7 years at this point, like continuity, like real life wise, but story wise, it hasn't been that long that the X-Men have been around. So he is eventually defeated. Wonder Man goes to fight him even though he doesn't want to. He's defeated, and then the Thing comes out. Great art, just a ridiculously silly premise, which is okay, but So the Thing and the champion fight, and it is that, the Thing is getting clobbered, unfortunately. And so then basically, the champion wins, but Ben just keeps on getting up. So he's like, did you beat me? Did you really beat me? Because I'm still here. And he's like, you'll never beat me. I'm just too stupid and ugly to know when to quit. And I was like, this, as silly as this is what I get into an argument all the time with one of my buddies that I think that the two strongest characters in the MCU are Spider-Man and the Thing. And I think it's because heart matters. Like, everybody's always like, the Hulk. And I'm always like, I think the Thing, because there's no quit in Benjamin J. Grimm. As shown by here, he finally collapses, and it's a great moment. Everybody cheers. Everybody rushes the ring. It's a full-on Rocky moment, but I was like, it's weird. Not to say that I didn't enjoy it. I like a good weird thing, but I was just like, this is a little boxing heavy. That makes me wonder what in the real world in 1982 triggered this. So if anybody was around when this came out, remembers that time period, I would love to know if there's a specific reason why this was so boxing heavy, because this happens a lot in Claremont's X-Men. I've noticed that when the Terminator hits theaters, suddenly I think the first movie came out right around Days of Future Past. When the Brood are introduced, it sort of feels like Alien, and there's some pop culture. This is part of the reason why the Cornerbox Classic thing has always been so interesting to me. Listen to music from the time period, and I should delve into a little bit of what was happening pop culture wise. I've got a lot of Marvel year by year history books that sometimes talk about big current events that happened in the world during a little bit of that. but it does make me kind of interested, like what pop culture stuff was happening that might have influenced some of that stuff. Power Man and Iron Fist number 86, GoldenEye, Gleaming Death, released July 6, 1982, written by Denny O'Neil, pencils by Dennis Cowan, inks by Carl Potts. Is that the Scrooge McDuck Carl Potts? Letters by Janice Chang, colors by Christy Scheel, and a cover by Dennis Cowan and Carl Potts. I just, like, last week picked up this run of comics, the 50 to 125 of Power Man and Iron Fist, to pull this in. So I've only read like 3 or 4 issues of Power Man and Iron Fist before I jumped to 86, because this came out during this week. So forgive me if I go through this relatively quickly. You'll probably be happy because we're already at 30 minutes because I talked about records. Things that I loved about this. Dennis Cowan's artwork. This is probably, in the Corner Box Classics way, this was the first time that I was introduced to Dennis Cowan's artwork, and I really liked it. It has a Sienkiewicz style thing going on here, like this panel of, like, they run into a bad dude who's trying to off somebody, and Luke Cage back there picking his teeth with a knife, doing the intimidating thing. They've been hired because this musician guy is going to record his album on a train across the country to some shows, and some people are trying to harm him. So Iron Fist and hey, look, McGroovy. Trains! So they're obviously on the train while he's recording this and dealing with saboteurs trying to off this musician for whatever reason. Luke stumbles upon the guy to discover that he's a junkie, which bums him out. And, you know, people keep on trying to kill him. And so it's just basically this, like, if they're on a train, Power Man and Iron Fist are trying to stop people along the route of the train from killing this musician dude. And then the musician dude, as the train eventually falls, they get off the train and the train falls. The musician guy is so hopped up on drugs that he just jumps off of the cliff to follow after the musician guy. And so then Luke Cage and Danny Rand find the dude. They track down the dude who put out the hit on this guy, and they go after him. And then the music executive dude shows up at the very end of it and is like, hey, that was the best-selling, it turns out this is the best-selling album of all time, much to the annoyance of Luke Cage, because he was bothered by the drug aspect of it, which I completely understand. So, Power Man and Iron Fist, like I said, it's a good, like, it was a good issue. I really like Dennis Cowan's art, but I'm also, like, I did the same thing with Micronauts, where it's like, I bought it after this whole thing started, so there's a lot to catch up on. So I wasn't going to spend way too much time on it. Plus, you know, brevity. And I needed to talk about the last issue that I would have picked up if I had pedaled up to my shop on July 6, 1982. Uncanny X-Men number 162, Beyond the Farthest Star, written by Chris Claremont, pencils by Dave Cockrum, inks by Bob Wyachek, letters by the great Tom Orzechowski, colors by Glennis Ween, and a cover by Dave Cockrum and Bob Wyachek. We've been dealing with the Brood. Whether or not we knew they were the Brood or not is a whole other thing. And the last issue wound up with some type of, like, medal ceremony. So this one, when it opens up with a tattered looking Wolverine running around some wild space-age jungle, you're like, well, what the hell happened? Well, turn the page, true believer. So Wolverine is slashing through this alien jungle, feeling sick, gets gassed by this thing that you know, he's been cutting up, and then suddenly has this vision of him and Mariko out horseback riding, and she's talking about, he's basically like, we are such a mismatched pair, and she's like, I admit nothing of the sort. You are an honorable man, Logan, with the soul and inner grace of a true samurai. No woman could ask for more. And I truly love the relationship between Logan and Mariko in those early days. It's incredibly tragic because of how much Logan did love her. And so all of a sudden he sees these birds, but the birds turn out to be Brood attacking, and they zap Mariko and kill her and Horse. And then Wolverine kind of shakes out of it, sees the attackers, goes after them, and it's sort of the same thing, where this is a little bit of a written in the noir style, where Wolverine is kind of narrating everything in a very Wolverine way. He eventually escapes those guys, but gets trapped in a Brood web above the rotting body of an Akante starship, and realizes how out of his depth he is during this. And sort of then, while this is going on, kind of starts to have, as these critters are coming after him, he starts to have flashbacks of what happened between the end of last issue and this issue, which is this medal ceremony that was interrupted by Deathbird. And then, like, all of a sudden everything goes black. He has these weird visions, which are wonderfully drawn by Dave Cockrum, of kind of what would be the Brood implanting him ceremony, but he's unaware of that. Then cuts back to them in the medal ceremony, and he's like, "Oh, I'm feeling so weird." And so then he starts talking to Carol Danvers, because she's there. And then some Shi'ar guys come up to her, and they're like, "Hey, your genealogy isn't mutant like the other ones. It's weird. Like, we ran a test, and we got to go get this checked out." And Logan's like, "Don't go with them." But she gets carried off, what he thinks is by these two characters, but it's actually Sleazoids, the Brood. And then he sees the X-Men start to get impregnated by the queen that is standing next to Lilandra. Like, he thinks it looks like that, but it's actually a Brood queen. Kitty recognizes what's happening and screams out for him, and he's very upset by that. And then he shakes out of that, goes full berserker mode on the rest of these Brood, starts to piece together what happened, that they're kind of being in this like induced dreamlike state. He goes, visits Kitty, envisions himself killing her, kisses her on the temple as she's sleeping, and is basically like, "I'm gonna go kill these suckers for what they've done to us." He sneaks in, sees Fang from the Shi'ar Imperial Guard morph into a Brood because of what they've done to him. He cries out during this, which alerts the Brood to his presence. Then he has to take them on and kill them. Great page by Cockrum of Wolverine fighting the Brood. And he does eventually, and while battling them in the Berserker Rage, sort of expunges the, like, you can see how he sort of looks part Brood, and realizes that his healing factor has been able to, like, knock the Broodling out, and he is back to being Wolverine. But he's basically like, my friends are probably dead, so I've got to go, like, make sure. He's basically going to make sure, like, none of my friends are having what happened to Fang. Like, I'll kill him if I have to. And then he's like, then I'm gonna kill all the rest of the Brood. So if you were a kid pedaling your bike up to the shop in July 6th, 1982, warm summer day, you got yourself a cool beverage, and I would be so ready after reading the end of this to pedal back up in August to watch another solo mission of Wolverine where he tears up some Brood. So that's Corner Box Classics for July 6th, 1982. Tomorrow is new comic book day. So it's also the last it's the fourth Wednesday of the month, which means I always have a meeting that sort of curtails my, like, can't go in the morning to the comic book shop, gonna have to go later, which means probably be putting the video out later. So it might be Thursday that new comic book day video comes out, and that might start to become a little bit of the norm, because it'll give me time to actually read one or two of the new books to talk about them, so I don't have to wait until the next week to discuss them. And I know my main man Hank starts preschool on a Wednesday. One of his days will be Wednesday, and so I want to be able to still go up to the shop with him. That's the whole point. And so I'm, then I don't want to like pick the kid up from school and ignore him for making a video so I can talk about the same books on Wednesday that everybody else talks about. That'd be dumb. So, we'll see. However, in the next video, we're going to do a tease. It'll be the new Comic Book Day bike ride. I'm excited about the new comics that are coming out this week. It's going to be a big, fun week with a lot of stuff that I am jazzed about, so that's always good. I love it when that happens on a Wednesday. And I just got, before I started filming this, in the mail, something that I have been waiting a few months for, and I'm going to give a little tease. We're going to talk about this in the Wednesday new comic book video. So there you have it, record store day, main man's birthday, and Cornerbacks Classics from July 6, 1982. So I will see you in a day if you're lucky, 2 if you're not, and we'll talk about new comic books, go on a bike ride. It'll be a blast. So look, oh, the tea's cold. Thanks for taking this ride with us. Bye.